Georgia on your mind.
Georgia on your mind. Georgia on your mind. Brought to you by the New Media Institute at the University of Georgia. It's season 4, Dogs on the Road.
Hello, welcome back to Georgia on Your Mind. I'm your host, Geovana Oliveira, and sitting with me today is Rebecca Ross. Today we are at the Love Y'all Fest in Atlanta, Georgia. Rebecca is the brilliant mind behind international bestsellers like The Queen's Rising, A River Enchanted, Divine Rivals, and her latest adventure, Wild Reverence. With her novels being translated in over 30 languages, it is clear that fans all over the world loves what she creates. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to chat with you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I always love the Love Y'all Book Festival, but I feel like with any type of book festival, there's a lot going on, but I'm very introverted, but I feel like it's so energizing, like being around readers and other authors. I'm having a really good time.
Good, I'm glad, and thank you again for fitting us into your schedule.
Of course.
So I kind of want to take our listeners back to your time at UGA. What were you like as a college student?
Oh gosh. So I graduated in 2012, first of all. So sometimes it's like, wow, it feels like yesterday, but it was so long ago. But I was one of those very studious people. Like I'd be on like the front row of class.
Love that.
I was also like very shy and reserved. So I was like very much a wallflower. But I do remember one of my favorite classes ever was a Jane Austen class. And we literally read all of Jane Austen's books. We like watched a few of the films, and just the conversations in that classroom was like I still think about it like many, many years later. So yeah, I think I just loved, obviously like UGA is a beautiful campus too. So just like being able to like walk around the campus was always so fun. So yeah, and of course, you know, football fans as well.
Yes,
so always go support the Bulldogs.
fun.
So it was a good time.
Yeah, I'm glad that you talked about books that impacted you during your college days. Have you always been a fan of fantasy, and what other genres did you dive into?
So I grew up loving Lord of the Rings. I was like obsessed with Lord of the Rings. I also, as a kid, I loved the Chronicles of Narnia as well. So like right off the bat, I was reading a lot of very fantastical stories. I also really loved the Dear America diaries. I don't know if anyone has heard of those books, but it was like a historical series, so I loved like the historical fiction. More recently, like I've really enjoyed romance, and I know there's been like a lot of like the rise of romantasy books, but like really loving like fantasy books with really strong romantic elements too, probably like my favorites.
I think we need more books and novels that kind of get us out of the real world, and that's something I really love about your books, is that it just distracts me from day to day, especially being in grad school right now. I feel like I'm opening the book and just stepping into a different world, so I really love that. When you're creating these worlds, how do you start diving into a world that you created with your mind?
Yeah, so a lot of fantasy authors, they will start either with character or they will start with the world. I'm a very character-driven writer, so I will see a character in a situation that I find really intriguing, and I'll ask them like, well, who are you? Like, what do you want? Like, what is going on in your world? And so very often I will start the story off of that one like little lightning bolt of inspiration, and then I build the world around them as I'm going. So for instance, with Divine Rivals, I was actually writing ideas down in a journal. And I wrote this line, and it was a girl who writes letters to her missing brother and the boy who reads them. And in that one line, I was like, well, you know, why is her brother missing? Like, how are these letters getting mysteriously delivered to the other boy? Like, what's going on? And so from that one line, I like built up that whole world and story.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes like as a fantasy author, I feel like it's so fun when you are creating like all the world building parts. Like sometimes you can get in the weeds of it and kind of bog your story down. So sometimes with revisions, like every revision, you're kind of like honing like what is the most important aspects of the world that I want to focus on, like what's unnecessary I need to cut. So it is kind of like this dance that you do. But yeah, I always start with character, and then everything else kind of builds up around my characters.
Yeah, I love that. I really admire just how authors are able to create an entire world. You know, when you look at the map of our world, it's like, it's cool, but we're kind of told what's there, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm like diving into, like you mentioned, Lord of the Rings, I just finished the series as well, and I'm just so amazed that it came from someone's mind, right? So I really admire just you putting your work out there. You mentioned how you feel inspired. I know that music and nature is really important to you. What's your go-to playlist when you need to get into the right writing mood?
So I love Hans Zimmer. Like, he's probably one of my favorite composers. Anytime I listen to a Hans Zimmer song, I just like, oh, I feel like ready to go and like create. And it's funny, he was on tour a couple years ago and he stopped in Atlanta, and I like told my husband, I was like, we are going to see Hans Zimmer. So I was able to see him play his music live, and there was one song in particular of his from the Dunkirk soundtrack that he did that I listened to that song over and over when I was writing Divine Rival. So when he played it live, it was just like, oh, I got like chill bumps, like being able to actually hear the song. But I love a lot of instrumental music. So that's probably what I gravitate towards the most. I do make playlists for each of my books, and sometimes like Spotify will like recommend something I've never heard of, and then I end up like falling in love with that song. So it's kind of nice like discovering like lesser known artists. But typically like anything instrumental, any soundtrack I love.
Yeah, Spotify is getting better and better at that.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to thank them for that. And with nature, nature's very important to you. You live near nature, near the mountains. I know you have a flock of chickens.
I have a flock of chickens,
You
yes.
love your animals.
Yes.
How does the nature you love influence the worlds you create?
Ooh, that's a great question. So it's interesting. Sometimes, like when I'm on a deadline and I have to get the book done by a certain date, it's easy to just be like in my office, like lost in my own world, just like writing and writing and writing. And sometimes, and this is why it's good to have a dog, because she'll come up to me and be like, okay, it's time to go outside. It's time to go walk around. And I always am just so inspired, especially like walking through the woods, or I love the ocean. Like I love visiting the mountains, or something as simple as keeping a garden. I have like so many metaphors I could compare like writing a book with tending a garden. So it's just something about being outside, like kind of digging in the soil. The chickens are like my therapy chickens. So sometimes I'll just sit and just watch them, and it's just like, okay, like everything's gonna be okay. Like, you know, so I do find like I just draw a lot of like beauty from like the world around me, and like that's what I want to pull into my books because it gives me so much peace. So yes, I do love nature.
Yeah, I also have a garden, and it taught me a lot about just growing and change and just allowing each season to come and go.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to grow in your garden?
So this is gonna sound funny, I love green beans. So I feel like they're really quite easy to grow, and then they're like very plentiful. So like one summer, I literally was like just picking beans like every other day, and we were eating green beans like every day for dinner. But it was like so, I don't know, something about growing your own food like that and being able to eat it, I loved it. But then the deer also really love green beans. So then like there's always a doe that will come through my yard, and she will wipe it out. And I'm like, oh no, at least I got the beans before she got to them. But I also really love like tomatoes. Like there's nothing like picking a tomato off the vine and then you go put it on a sandwich. You can almost like taste the sunlight in it. It's just, so I don't know. I love any type of success with like a vegetable garden, because I feel like you got the bugs, you got the deer, you have all this stuff against you. So if you can actually harvest something, it's like, oh.
Yes, I totally agree. And so what was the biggest struggle you had with gardening?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I feel like I have a really hard time with the squash bugs. So I grow squash, and like they would literally come out of nowhere, and they would, again, like something like you have to constantly be watching stuff, because it like the bugs will get to it. And if you're trying to have like an organic garden, like you don't want to spray a bunch of stuff on it. You're trying to learn like, how do I set my garden up where there's certain plants you can have like beside your tomatoes, like planting herbs, or certain things like marigolds that help like keep the bugs away. So I'm trying to learn that skill, like how can I like strategically put up a garden where things are like complementing each other to kind of help with the bug problem. So I'm still like, I don't know, sometimes it's this time of year, like in February, where like spring is coming, and it's like the fall spring is kind of hit here too. We're starting to get warm, and you think, oh, it's springtime. Not quite yet, but I always get really inspired, and I plan a huge garden, and then it's so much upkeep too. And then when it's like July in Georgia and you don't want to go, like weed your garden because it's so hot. But no, I think there's just like little things. I feel like I get a little bit better every year, but there's still so much to learn.
Yeah, always. So diving deeper into those little struggles from day to day, I really love the story of how you became a full-time author. You didn't just dive right into it, right? You worked multiple jobs before you stepped into that role after college. You cleaned houses, you you worked in a library, a lifetime captionist, and even in a dude ranch in Colorado. Tell me about those jobs. Take me to that time in your life, and which job got you most out of your comfort zone?
So the Colorado job, that was a gap year. So I just graduated high school, so it was before I started college. And I'm such a homebody. It was a big deal for me to fly out to Colorado. I didn't really know anybody there, away from my family, but it really was a good thing for me because it helped me grow up. And of course I love Colorado, and the ranch was beautiful, and you made really good friends, you worked really hard, but you had a good time. Let's see what else. I think working as a lifetime captionist taught me a ton. I really loved that job. I loved the students I worked with. I liked it because I would go to class with them and I would caption everything being spoken in class, and because I love going to class, like I could sit and kind of soak in a lecture even though I wasn't a student. So I still felt like I was learning and taking information in, and I wasn't even a student. So yeah, and of course librarian. I was a very small school. So nothing big, but just being able to like read stories to kids and like see the type of books that kids wanted to read, like the books they were like pulling off the shelf, was so interesting to me. And I will say, cleaning, there's something so interesting about cleaning.
Oh my gosh, totally.
You're like, you
Right
are,
there with you.
it's like, I do a lot of brainstorming when I'm cleaning, because I'm just like, you're kind of just doing the same monotonous like motions, but then like my mind actually, like my imagination kind of like starts. I'll listen to music and like be thinking of book ideas while I'm cleaning. So even like simple stuff like that, like I feel like kind of helped build my skills, or just really just, I don't know, maybe sharpen my mind, like to think about things in ways I hadn't before. So it is really interesting. I always love to hear other jobs that like people, like other authors have had. Sometimes I think they can have like really quirky, fun jobs, and sometimes more monotonous jobs, but everything I think kind of sharpens you.
Totally. I think it's important also to speak on it's not graduating from college and then jumping into your dream role. Like that happens sometimes, but it's not often. And so I guess I'm taking us back a little bit, but when you were graduating from UGA, how did you feel?
So I have a kind of interesting story where I started off at a community college studying English because I loved reading and writing. And people would constantly ask me, oh, are you going to teach it? And I was like, no, I actually never thought about teaching English. I have so much respect for English teachers. I was like, that is not my skill set. And I couldn't really say I'm going to write a book because, like, you know, who knew if I ever was really going to publish a book and be able to write full time. But I got so discouraged by the way people were reacting to that. Like, if you're going to go to college, you should study something that's going to give you a job right out of the, you know, post-graduation. So when I transferred to UGA, I did change my major. And I went over to the dietetics, which is like going from humanities to the sciences was a huge jump. And I kind of had like a full year doing that before I realized, like, this is not really what I want to do. And like, why am I forcing myself to like study something that I'm just not, like, not that I wasn't passionate about it, because I found it really interesting. It was like, I just can tell, like, this is not what I'm supposed to do. So when I went back to the English department, and it's funny, like, if you've studied English at any college, like, we all understand that the way people treat us, like, oh, what are you gonna, you're so wasted, you know, it's a wasted major, what are you gonna do with it? You can do whatever you want with an English major, like, literally, whatever you want. So I think by the time I graduated, I felt really, like, so much more confident. It's probably because I had that season of doubt where I had to figure myself out, like, what do I want to study? And then once I graduated, I got a job, like, as the captionist, and that was perfect. Like, all my skills, like, from English, like, it was perfect. So I feel like graduating, it's an exciting time, but it's also kind of a big transition time too, right? Sometimes I think it is hard, like when you're coming out of the college scene and then you are trying to like start a career, or maybe have a few jobs in between trying to build up your career. It can feel very difficult, but I think anything's possible, right? And again, like, I think there's something so important by studying something that you love. That's something that you're passionate about, no matter what people say. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just stay true to what you want to do and what you like doing, because it's gonna make it seem just like, I don't know, it's very powerful when you're doing a job with something that you love. I mean, it's just like, there's no other words to describe like having a job like that.
Totally. And I thank you for bringing that up, because I think we just kind of need to hear that more, especially those that are stepping out of college and into the real world. It can be really discouraging. So I really appreciate you speaking on that. You talked about how you were originally you switched your major. I admire that story because it's not easy to change directions like that. What advice would you give for those that are also stuck in a path that doesn't seem right for them to trust themselves to change direction?
Yeah, so one of the big reasons why I changed directions is I had ended up failing organic chemistry, which we know organic chemistry at UGA is a weed out class. They want to weed out people like me. No, it's a very tough class. Yeah. So, and I needed a C or higher, and I ended up with a D, and I'd never made a D in my life, and I was just like, I do not know what to do because I don't want to retake this class. Like I was so miserable taking this class. And the interesting thing about, I actually went to class one day, and of course it's one of like the bigger classrooms, right? And the red and the black was kind of like on the seat next to me. So I was like, I'll just read the newspaper while I'm waiting for the professor to arrive. And so there was an article in there where they were interviewing Jackson Pierce, who's also an alumni, and she publishes YA fantasy books. So like one of her books had just published, so they were featuring her, and she was talking like about writing young adult fiction. And I was reading that like, this is so cool. Like, this is what I want to do. And I was like, why am I sitting in this classroom just like struggling every day when I love school? You know, I'm very studious. And then the professor arrived, was like, well, this is great, but it'll never happen to me. Like I literally thought that. And of course, end of semester hits, I get a D, I'm devastated. I'm like crying to my parents. And of course, I'm like, what, like early 20s, I don't even remember how exactly old I was, but my mom came and talked to me in my bedroom that night. She was like, hey, I think you should just go back to the English department. And she's like, who cares what anyone else thinks? Like, this is what you love. Like, you need to just follow that voice inside of you. Like, you know this is where you belong. So just like be brave enough, and like, who cares if you spend a year doing this, you tried and it didn't work out. So I think sometimes having that other voice to come in, like when we're full of doubt ourselves, it's nice to have someone else kind of bring in that clarity. But also like the encouragement, like, yeah, like it's gonna be okay. Like at the time, it was like the worst thing I could have imagined. It's like, it's actually gonna be fine. And the interesting thing is this was over the winter break, so I like swapped my major back to the English department. And so when I was walking up to Park Hall, like the first day of spring semester, it's like January, cold, blustery, very gray. And Park Hall is a beautiful building, so I'm walking up to, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I still was like, man, I hope I made the right decision, like coming back. But when I walked in the breezeway, this is no longer there on the wall, but someone had drawn a hobbit foot with a permanent marker like on the wall, right when you walk in. And it said Frodo lives underneath it. And I was like, okay, like this is where I'm supposed to be. Like these are like my people. So I do think, with anything in life, you'll have failures, you'll have doubts. I'm so glad I failed that class. If I hadn't failed that class, I would have never written my books. Like I would not be sitting here talking to you about it. I would have just kept going on that path and would have never written a book. So I think you just see like those failures as like redirecting you to something much better. But yeah, just listen to the voice. I think like we all know like innately like what we want to do, even if it's a dream we've never like spoken aloud to somebody. But just to chase after that, be brave, like go after it.
You brought up Frodo. I love that story of you seeing his foot and just thinking this is where I'm supposed to be. And I know there's been other moments in your life that you've had signs of that you're supposed to be an author and that's where you're supposed to be. Can you take us back to another moment that you've had a sign like that reaffirmed that you're doing what you're meant to be doing?
Yeah, so sometimes people ask me like, when did you know you wanted to be an author? And you could have asked me when I was 8 years old, and I would have told you I wanted to be a published author. And it's interesting, I had a copy of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that I had read multiple times. And when I was maybe like 10 years old, like I looked at the copyright page where it said HarperCollins, like HarperCollins address, and I circled it. It's like, one day I'm gonna be published by HarperCollins. I'm like a 10-year-old, And then it wasn't until many, many years later when I'd written The Queen's Rising, which is my debut, and got a deal with HarperCollins with that book. And I was preparing to write the dedication, and I wanted to go back and read all my favorite dedications. And the dedication in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is one of my favorites because he dedicates it to his goddaughter. And he says, one day you'll be old enough to read fairy tales again. So I like pulled off my copy, and I had totally forgotten I had circled HarperCollins address. And so I saw, I was like, oh yeah, I remember being 10 and I circled this, and now my book's about to come out with HarperCollins. So I think just from a very early age, it was the only thing that I was just like, I ever truly wanted to do. And I spent so many hours. I cannot even tell you how many hours I spent just writing stories by hand as a teen. So it was like all of these hours just kind of building and building, and I didn't really finish anything. I'd write chapter 1, chapter 2, and then I'd start a different idea. Write up to chapter 5, start a different idea. But I finally got to a point where I could finish something, and that gave me a lot of confidence. And I remember when I wrote The Queen's Rising, I drafted it, and I was like, I think this book is good. Like, I've been dreaming of being published, and I finally have written a book that I think is publishable. And I gave it to my 2 younger sisters to read, and they're much younger than me. So it was like they were like the perfect age to read it. And they read it, and they were like, we love it, you should publish it. So I did, and I dedicated it to them. So just like all these tiny little moments that I think they just added up. But it truly was like, I've just never wanted anything as much as that. So I decided to go for it. And I feel very lucky that, you know, I am published, and I've been able to stay in the publishing game too. 'Cause sometimes it's hard. You know, you might get your deal, but then it's even harder to stay within the world of publishing sometimes.
Totally. It seems like from that moment that you circled HarperCollins, you've been anchored to that path.
Yeah.
Even if you got a little distracted on the
Yeah,
way
I
with
got
chemistry,
distracted.
we all do. But it seems like you've been anchored. That's really awesome. Take us to like you transitioning from writing and, you know, grinding to get to that moment, and then realizing that you're published. You're in that moment with HarperCollins. Did it take a while for you to stop and just relax and enjoy it, or did you have that grinding mindset for a while?
I feel like I had the grinding mindset for a long time. But the year that I wrote The Queen's Rising, it was 2015. I wrote that book at the beginning of the year. I got a literary agent by the middle of the year, and then by October I had the 3-book deal with HarperCollins. So all of that happened very quickly. And I just remember being, like, it almost did not feel real. Like, it felt super surreal. But yeah, I think there's been plenty of, like, pinch me moments within it. Just, like, I can't believe, like, you know, honestly, anytime I write a book and finish it, I'm like, I can't believe I wrote another book and finished it. Or anytime I'm starting a new book, like, how do I write a book again? Like, every book is different, it feels like. Even though I've done it so many times, there's always something new to learn.
Yeah, it's really beautiful that it has been staying that way for you. So we're talking about a lot of big successes in your career. Is there a moment that didn't seem like a big success on paper, but was a big win to you personally?
Gosh, that's a great question. And I honestly feel like kind of going back to, I'd mentioned this when I wrote The Queen's Rising and I finished the manuscript, which finishing a book is always a big deal when you're like trying to take this as a hobby to profession. But I think when I gave it to my sisters to read and the way that they loved it so much, like to me that was like, I don't know, I can still just remember like their enthusiasm and just like how excited they were. So then when I saw the book like printed and bound and like handing it to them so they actually could see their names like in the dedication page, like it was really special.
That is special, and also because they're your sisters, you
Yes.
know, they're gonna tell you.
They're gonna tell me if
yeah,
something sucks.
totally. I want to shift our conversation to something that you've been very open about, and I know is deeply personal to you. You have, beyond your work as an author, you've used your voice to talk about your experience with endometriosis,
Yes.
a chronic condition that so often gets misdiagnosed and misunderstood. I was hoping that you would give us some advice on how, when others are advocating for chronic conditions, what should we know when we're speaking up on platforms?
Yeah, that is a really great question. I feel like not many people ask that. So I love that you've asked it. I think the thing with endometriosis, it's very prevalent. You know, 1 in 9 women in the United States have it. So chances are you do know somebody that has it, someone you love, a friend, if you don't have it yourself. And I think one of the hardest things about it, it's a condition where you get gaslit constantly. So it takes an average of 8 to 10 years to even get the diagnosis. And even to get the diagnosis, you have to undergo a surgery where they have to cut away the tissue and send it to pathology. So just imagining the hurdles of being able to even get a diagnosis is huge. Whereas along the way, you're typically being passed around from doctor to doctor because they don't know what's wrong with you, you know? Oh, it's just like in your head, or oh, let's just do this or do that, but it's nothing that's really gonna help you understand and get to the root cause of it. So I think just like you said, like sometimes when you are going through a chronic condition and you feel like there are no answers and you're in a lot of pain, just having somebody there is it's like so vital and so important. Having someone to help advocate, if you go with your loved one to their doctor's appointments even, like you have another person there, because again, the gaslighting can be so intense. And yeah, I think also just educating yourself on what it is, because there's a lot of misinformation about endometriosis, unfortunately. It is like a whole body condition, like you mentioned. And so one of the things that even when I got my diagnosis, like I started following other accounts that were very well like versed with endo, and so like all the information they're sharing is like just so good because they're educating and they're kind of talking about how you can support people with it, what to do if you have it yourself, because a lot of times the symptoms can be ranged to many different things because it is a whole body condition. So I think just, I don't know, just making sure you're educating yourself, like being there for the people that have it. Sometimes I think with endo, it can be very painful. So if you have it, sometimes you just have to cancel plans suddenly. And that's hard. I feel like you're like canceling on people or missing out. But I think for the people that realize like what's actually happening and why that's necessary, just to just be supportive. And really that goes like such a long way. Again, that question you asked, it goes such a long way.
Yeah, and people that truly care for you will be there for you no
Yes.
matter what.
Yes.
So within your books, you have a lot of themes that come up in every story, and one that I see is resilience. So how has your experience with endometriosis influenced the way you write and see resilience?
Yeah. You know, I didn't get my official diagnosis till June of 2023, and I had probably struggled with this condition for 20 years. So I definitely think when I look back on all my books, like there's little pieces of me within all of them, right? And with every book, like I kind of want to challenge myself to even like take on like, I don't know, more challenging aspects of writing a book, like, you know, keep getting better and better. But I do think there's pieces of me and where I was at in my life at the time kind of woven into those books. And so I love that you saw the resiliency, because I do think with something like endo, sometimes you feel like you're just literally pushing through pain and like just having to push and just keep going and going and going until you can't go anymore, it feels like. So I definitely think, but at the same time, like there's always hope too. That's like another thing in my books, like there's always hope. So for anybody that is kind of going through that journey with endo or any other chronic condition where you are struggling to be heard by a doctor, you're struggling to find care, you're trying to get a diagnosis, there is hope. And I just want people to know that, because sometimes like when you feel trapped in a condition like that, depression and suicidal thoughts, like those are very common. So, but also like you mentioned earlier, like books are a way to escape too. So even like if we feel like we are kind of struggling through something, like having a way to like open a book and kind of fall into it, I think is really beautiful too.
And so when creatives want to use their voice or maybe their art to advocate, what advice would you give to them when they're beginning that process?
I think just to really speak from your heart. A lot of times with something like this, you're speaking from experience too. Sometimes two people's experiences aren't going to be exactly the same. So I think just being willing to listen, to hear other people's stories is like really important. It makes us very empathetic too when we kind of read outside of our range, right? Like we're reading about something that maybe we haven't lived with or experienced, but we learn from that because of the empathy. So yeah, I think just staying true to yourself and feeling, it can be very vulnerable, but like sharing the things that you feel confident sharing, because it does honestly make like a survival guide to the people coming up behind you that might see it. And that's why like art and storytelling is so important.
Yeah. Rebecca, thank you so much for just being open to talk about your experience with endometriosis. I'm glad that we have voices like you out there that are speaking up about that, and that now Georgia on Your Mind is a platform where that story is being told. Before we end, I want to shift our conversation to something that will get us a little bit more on the edge of our seats. Okay. I want to do a speed round if you're up for it. My goal is for us to kind of just clear our minds, and I want the unfiltered truth from you, okay? All right, first question. Your favorite storytelling trope?
I love the marriage of convenience.
Okay. Yes. Which of your characters do you resonate with the most?
Probably Iris.
I can see it. Favorite place you've ever written?
Ooh, probably right by the ocean. I had like a little condo, and I was working outside and I could hear the waves, and I thought it was just perfect.
Were you at the ocean to write, or did you just get inspired?
It was a family thing, but of course I brought my laptops. Like I was like on deadline or something, but I was working on A River Enchanted, and there's a scene where Jack is singing to the spirits of the ocean and he's calling them up. So it was like the perfect like seeing to write there because I was hearing the ocean.
Yeah, probably just flowing right out of you.
Yeah.
What's a book you wish you could read again for the first time?
That's so tough. There's a lot, but I feel like the first one that comes to mind is Finnegan of the Rock by Melina Marchetta, one of my favorite books ever.
Most important thing to get right about Iris and Roman when they go on screen?
The chemistry, it has to be there. The two leads, they just have to have that push-pull between them. Yeah. I think it's most important.
Your favorite Lord of the Rings character?
I love Aragorn.
He's a good one. And finally, this is the one I'm most curious about. Do you know the ending before you start writing?
Sometimes I don't. I am a discovery writer, so sometimes I always know the beginning. And I know like big emotional beats in the story that I'm writing towards, but sometimes I don't know the end till I get like further into the story, which is always kind of a stressful way to write, but that's how my brain works. Yeah. Every now and then though, like I will know the end and I'm working towards it. Yeah.
Rebecca, thank you so much for being here with us today. It has been such an honor to dive a little deeper into your mind and know the stories behind all your books. I'm so excited to see where your words take us next.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was an honor getting to talk with you.
And for those tuning in, thank you for listening. Thank you to the Marriott for having us, and we'll see you at the next stop.
Thanks for tuning in to Georgia on Your Mind, Dogs on the Road. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Georgia on Your Mind Pod for the latest updates, and we'll see you at the next stop.